in our local activity in Wednesday, yes, we brought several people, 3 young girls that expressed their work in these areas. So to improve among youngsters the need to do something to be careful with what we do in our local society. Local authorities has also an important role in guaranteeing human rights in Torres Novas, and we do lots of activities with youngsters, but not only with youngsters, even with the elder and the population of our prison, for example, to improve the knowledge of what is our policy and the practices of human respect and the respect of human rights too, and that all citizens have access to quality public services and decent living conditions. We have been participating in several Europe for Citizens projects, and we are exchanging our practices with all of you in this project and other projects before, just to see what we do together. And we do all similar policies, but it's important to relate them and to exchange good practices between all of us.
Of course, that's the whole point of the projects as this one, to learn from one another and to try to implement other ideas and best practices. The same question to Octavia. What kind of, in your opinion, what part of city planning or town planning, in what areas human rights can be implemented?
I think that human rights as an important consideration in city or town policy and planning. This is because cities and towns are made up diversity communities, and planning decision can significant impact of people's human rights. For example, urban planning decisions and access to hosting, public transportation and green space can affect people's right to freedom of movement, to clear air and water. So I think that it's one of the most important impact create a town or city policy.
I couldn't agree more. I have also a question regarding the, of course I'm asking for your experience, for your opinion. Who are the most disadvantaged groups and who, in your opinion, needs the most specific support in that relation? Elvira, could you share your thoughts on that area? Do you have any experience with specific groups that would need specific support? You mentioned young women, young activists, but are there any other groups, or maybe you could try to share some more on that special group?
We don't have a sort of special groups we work with. We have youngsters. That is a group with the needs to understand what we are doing and what is supposed to be doing in our city and related to the Charter of European Fundamental Rights too. The youngsters, we have been working too with the prison group. Those who are in prison, that is a group that needs to understand that there are rights that has to be protected. So we work with them too. With our library, we had projects with European policy too, but we have in our library a group that works with them too in prison. We have Roman citizens, I don't know how you call them, but Roman people.
Roma people, yes.
With them, they are here, they are living in Torres Novas as any other citizen. So we don't have a special politics for those who are included in our society, because they are part of our society. They don't need to have a special treatment because they are like us. That's the importance of these kind of policies that make people and make others to understand that we are all one. We are all citizens of the same town, and so they belong. They don't need to have a special treatment. They sometimes have needs because sometimes they don't understand that their children have to go to school, but we deal with this, and they are all in schools, one or another that gets away, but they are all part of our society. And with women, we do understand that we have a work to do against violence with women.
Domestic, you mean domestic violence, right? Domestic violence victims.
Not only domestic violence, but always also violence against children or other kinds of violence. And we deal with it in a special department in our
service.
In our service, we have a service.
We have attending points, special attending points for women who have problems with domestic violence.
Yes, and this attending point serves all people, even men, as that kind of problem. So we are working also with this special group, also with children, but with men and women that suffers from domestic violence, for instance.
Can I say something more, Eva?
Of course, you're welcome.
Besides what Elvira just told, I think that we have in Portugal two groups that we have to attend with special attention these days, considering, of course, the fundamental rights achievement. Migrants, more than refugees. We in Portugal we are having lots of migrants, not only from Africa but also from Brazil and other countries. And and also we have a problem with low-income families with low incomes. I think those are the groups more vulnerable to guarantee fundamental rights. In Portugal, the situation now is migrants and people with low income people are having some problems with financial problems, and I think local policies have to look to these kind of problems.
Yeah, and these migrants are a small group in Torres Novas, in our city, and they are. We don't have still attending point for them, but we are all committed to help them when they get here. But they come here to work, and we are starting to understand that they are growing. The number of them are growing in our city, but they are always being protected by our national government, and they have specific areas of protection. So with a local policy, we still are working to understand what we can do for them, especially with houses, apartments for them to inhabit.
Thank you so much. Octavia, the same question to you. Do you think there are certain vulnerable groups that you would like to mention as the ones who need special support?
I totally agree with our partners. In my experience, migrants and refugees may face barriers in accessing to basic service and may also experience discrimination. So it can be language barriers, lack of familiarity with the local society, but also cultural differences can pose challenges. But not only migrants and refugees, but also people with disabilities may face barriers in accessing public space, transportation, and other service, as well as discrimination and stigma. So I think it's really important that we should try educate young people, but also older people, and talking about diversity, talking about tolerance, and why it's so important.
Yes, I to that groups that we've already mentioned, I would add the elderly, since this is a really tricky, I would say, to have this this kind of approach to remember about the elderly, because when planning or designing a space or designing transportation, etc., or designing the access to education or healthcare or culture as all of the activities of the city, we as at least that's my opinion, we sometimes forget about the elderly. We try to remember about the children, we try to remember about the offer for the families, we try to incorporate different ideas and programs targeted to people with disabilities, but the seniors are, I would say, a separate category with a special set of needs that is not, at least in my opinion, referring to the Polish towns that I know, it's not that very common to have a special. I mean, it starts to become more popular right now, but still the seniors are not the group that is taken into consideration while planning. But maybe you would disagree with me.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course.
We've got special university for our seniors, and I was very surprised that they are so open and they really want to spend time with our students from abroad. So they are practice language, they are trying to be active online. So it's amazing, and I think that we should put more attention to these areas of activities because they really want to be part of our society.
Yeah, you just need to provide tools, right? Nina, would you like to add something to what we've said? Would you like to share your experience?
Well, I think it's very important that while planning a social solutions for cities, we have to be we have to base them on data.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is the most important thing is to have a diagnosis of the situation, because certain groups are obviously more endangered of discrimination, but also we have to take into the account that most discrimination is intersectional. So we have to see this group as not coherent. We don't have only seniors. Mm-hmm. Seniors are mostly women in Poland. What about senior migrant women? And seniors often have disabilities. That's why we have to talk about accessibility in the most universal way we can. I think it's that's what's amazing with the human rights based approach. You analyze every aspect of your city in terms of being able to guarantee the social cohesion, and you have to take that into the account while planning transportation, urban planning, greenery in the city, cultural policies, and so on. You have to take account very diverse needs of every group, and you can not do that without numbers. You have to have the statistics. You have to know who's using the city. We have to go deeper. We know that transportation is for all, but who actually uses it? Who's the most important for us, and what needs have to be considered while planning the transportation? Is there a place for women with a child bassinet? Is there a place for seniors? How children are being seated in the tramway, and so on, so on. So you have to really assess the possibility of use for every citizen while planning the city policy. And that's why it's important not to only focus on certain projects being addressed to women, LGBTQI, migrants, and so on. That's obviously very important, but we have to go even deeper, and we have to think about sectorial policies being inclusive as a whole, not only on projects addressed to certain groups. We have to do both, I think, to really find the perspective that allows us to build an inclusive and open cities long term.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Because Nina, you are completely right, but sometimes it's difficult even with data. So there is a relevant approach from a great Danish urbanist, Jan Gehl. I don't know if you heard about it, but he says it's about, of course, urban policies, but we can also adopt it to social programs. What he say is defending all over the world that we need policies that goes for kids below 8 years old and seniors for more than 80 years old. If we have our urban spaces adaptable and our policies adaptable for these two groups, very young kids and old people, so everything is going to be prepared to help everyone, you know. I think it's very, very interesting approach that he's going around the world defending this theory.
So in that sense, if we plan and make adaptations for both the very young and the old, then we include everybody basically, right?
Everyone will be included.
Okay.
That's an interesting approach.
Denmark.
So that you don't categorize and that you don't design specifically for certain groups, but you try to be as inclusive as possible. And that's I would say that's a proper approach. Do you want to add anything to what we just said? Any other thought-provoking? Because I would say that it's really
I would just.
Nina, go on.
Sorry, I think there is a delay, and
yes, there is a slight delay. Yes,
the connection. Yeah. Okay. I couldn't catch my myself. I think it's the idea of 8 to 80. It's amazing, and it's very helpful while planning. I also think the very similar idea is the feminist city, because it's if you take under consideration the gender issue, it's becoming more and more universal also. So if you're addressing the women's issues in the public sphere, you're also in the same time addressing seniors and disability and so on. It's very universal. So I think it's very creative to look through our city policies in the perspective of certain groups, and we will, I think, acknowledge the fact that they have very similar needs. But well, we sort of created and designed our cities for so many years only for one group, that the perspective of others it's just, we need the same things. We just have to, I think, name them and diagnose them, and I know that's not easy, but I think it's it's sort of a future for cities.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for mentioning that. We had the former partners meeting, partner event was organized by our Czech partners and was devoted to human rights approach, but in relation to gender equality. So we were having a big session on gender mainstreaming in relation to public policies, in relation to public services, social services, etc. So that's a really valid point. I must agree. I would like to also ask you, what is your, and this is the question to Nina, because you are a plenipotentiary for the mayor of Krakow for equality policy. You said that it's a quite recent position, but still you have a few years of experience. Could you tell us a little bit more about the role of the plenipotentiary, the activities that you take on, what are you doing while cooperating with the mayor of Krakow?
Of course. I am personally responsible for creating a quality policy strategy for many years ahead of us. That's what we are now focusing on. We've published in January the deep diagnosis on the situation of people, of certain groups that can face discrimination, but in the perspective of different, their perspective in different sectors. What I've been focusing on in recent 2 years is a gender mainstreaming. We've adopted the first gender equality plan in Poland, and we've also established a very horizontal project for the gender mainstream things, sport, workforce and business. We've started the project that supports women in the workplace. We've started a campaign for supporting women in sports. We have a very large program for her story in public sphere. We want to retrieve the memory for women from Krakow. We've established a first prize that celebrates women's achievements in Krakow. We have also created 2 human rights connected festivals. In March, we have a month of Krakowian women, and in May, in just few days, we are gonna strike the Equality May. I am working intensively also with documents. So for example, our strategy, city strategy for until 2050, it's already been adopted in a way that addresses human rights. So it gives us a base to work on document as like family policy, youth policy, education, culture, and so on. So I work on those documents to implement the human rights based approach. I am also very involved in many networks from also abroad. I've actually just visited Shamsa Sadi from Vienna, that she's the responsible for human rights. So there's a lot of, I think, very important connections between the cities all over Europe that discuss human rights. It's very helpful to learn from people who have experience for many years, and they've been involved in these topics, and they've sort of set precedents in this area. So it's wonderful to learn from that. With this, I would like to also invite someone, because we have an empathic, international empathic cities forum in May in Krakow, and it's gonna be connected and focused on human rights approach in city policies. So maybe that's something that interests people here. From my perspective, the most important part while being a plenipotentiary is to talk with city employees from all of the departments, really explain the idea of human rights-based approach, to implement it, work and say to encourage them to take this under account. It's a new perspective, especially in Poland. You can imagine that human rights are a topic that raises a lot of eyebrows. Unfortunately, for many, it's become something that is considered a bit controversial, especially with groups as LGBTQI, for example. So it's been a lot of it involves a lot of communication also inside of the city hall to establish a sort of institutional knowledge about human rights, and it's important to work on this together as sort of like within the city to establish this priority, not only in a symbolic way that the mayor says that we are focusing on equality, but also to talk with every department and then explain to them what does that mean, why is it important, and how we can do that. And that's a massive part of this work, and I think it's the only way to do it. You have to communicate, and you have to talk, and you have to explain. And in the meantime, you have to do the work, the projects, the programs, and so on. So it's a lot, but it's very interesting. And I think Krakow has shown that we are really prioritizing this, and we've underlined this in the city strategy. We've underlined this in documents as diversity charter, European Charter for equal treatment for men and women, and joining the ICORN or FemCities network, and so on. So it's very important also to establish your position in a symbolic way, so people can also see this as a city being a part of a larger network, a larger group of cities, and a larger idea. And if people working in the city hall and city institutions feel that equality is something that is making us a community, and it's sort of creating a better cities, it's I think a key to success. It's also a process.
That's really impressive. I can only add that I can share some more information about the conference that you were talking about in mid-May. We can share this. I think we can share this information with the project partners. The program sounded really interesting, and it's mid-May, and it's not in collision with our next event that we have as part of a Polish event, the workshop on the 12th. So I think the mid-May would be also interesting for the project partners, because we will have a continuation of our event on the 12th of May, and then the 15th and the 16th. Am I right, Nina? The 15th and the 16th, it's the empathy conference.
I've sent a link on the chat. I don't think it's active for some reason, or maybe it is. It's in English, so I think it's accessible. Unfortunately, there will be no streaming, but we really encourage you to come to Krakow.
There is, there is still some time. So if anyone of us is more interested, then that's a suggestion. And yes,
I could say something about what we do. Nina said a lot, and very interesting perspectives and of the municipality. And I also understand that communication is really a big issue in a municipality that works in every level, with every level of making people part of the town. One of the things we have here for all older adults often have difficulty getting around. So we have a special transportation. We call it transportation on demand, with George working on that too in another way. We have also special needs for older people here in Torres Novas is healthcare. That is a problem because access to healthcare is critical for older people. So local cities can work with healthcare providers to ensure that they are sufficient facility services available to meet their needs. We have lots of associations working on that too. We call it EPSS, private social associations. Also, we have social programs for older adults. So local cities are creating here in Portugal and also in Torres Novas are creating programs and events that allows seniors to interact with others and participate in community activities. We have also in several cities senior universities that where they can stay engaged and being active in their communities with that senior universities are teaching computer classes, language courses, and other skills training programs, and they are doing it very well because people have to get out, being with others. That is important for Portuguese people, an important issue because they are getting older. Our population is getting older, so they cannot stay at home alone. They have to have specific training or specific places where a community can engage with them and volunteer among other older adults are also a specific issue that is happening here in Torres Novas. They don't want to be at home without nothing to do, so we have a lot of volunteer and community engagement with these volunteers in local events and activities. And we have also to recognize their contributions to the community. So we have to improve this kind of skills and improve the engagement and communication between all of those who work in the municipality or between all associations present in a local city, in the city, is a very important issue, because like that, if we talk to each other and we can connect everyone, everything is going to be perfect. It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but people.
It's going to be better, right?
Closer. People will be closer.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I would say that using networks, also inviting non-governmental organizations that are working locally, they're working with people, so using the bottom-up approach would also be really useful in that context. So and also basically giving the tools and the voice to the groups that we would like to have involved. So using the bottom-up approach, that would be the case. And of course, I agree completely with what all of you said, that communication is key, and open communication is key. Understanding of certain ideas, programs to be implemented, or policies to be designed with the people and for the people that we are addressing. Those ideas would be best. What kind of best practices would you like to share with us? Do you have any specific success story that you would like to share in that relation? I could because for me I have two groups that I would like to refer, that I was working on, and I'm still actively working with. One is small children, so children till the age of 3 years old, which is the group that you address activities for, but basically you are addressing the activities to the parents of those children, allowing them to be active in the labor market, allowing them for different kind of activities, for networking, for different kind of support and network of active parents and specialists working with small children. The other group is the elderly that I mentioned before. One of the best practices that I was involved implementing was a series of trainings and courses and information days targeted to the elderly people, but not only the elderly people in the cities, but the even more excluded group, the elderly in the rural areas. We have been actively working on a project in our region designed to work and develop the IT skills, IT literacy among the elderly, in especially focusing on the rural areas, because we know that when we can all agree that we have some experience with senior volunteers, we have some experience with active seniors attending university. We have in Poland this strong tradition of something called the third age university, so the university classes designed for the senior citizens, run by the universities, offering them different courses and a space to interact, to connect, to create networks and employ their free time and enthusiasm. But in the project that I'm mentioning, we were focusing more on the elderly in the rural areas. That we based on the research and data that we've also mentioned, that if we're planning something, that we should probably start from the diagnosis of the situation. We've been implementing a project working with and for the seniors, involving business, so involving companies that are implementing innovation in relation to the aid for seniors. So I'm not going to mention the name of the company, because that's not the time for that, but I can share some more information about the project later on. But the idea was to figure out a way to go to smaller villages, or organize it through the volunteers working with seniors, and try to show them that using a computer or using a smartphone is not that very tricky, and they can employ and ask for help. They have a person who is willing to explain to them why this damn thing is not working, because it's not that easy to use the new technology, especially if you don't have a family supporting you in that. And the reason for using this kind of approach was the diagnosis showing that first of all, the Łódzkie region is the region that is aging the fastest from 16 Polish regions, and second of all, the problem of migration, but migration from the rural areas to the bigger cities, to the metropolia. So you have a lot of elderly people basically left behind with no proper network and not sufficient way of contacting the family members, but also using the services and asking for help in case of emergency even. So that was one of the ideas that we've implemented.
Can I add something?
Sure,
from
of course.
University perspective. At our university, we've got students from 47 countries, and we really try to use these students to communicate with our society. So, for example, we are take our students to language exchange. One of NGOs organize something like language exchange meeting, and students go to the pubs, talking with each other, playing games together, and also practice language. And I think that working with children is also important, because, for example, we take our Erasmus students to the kindergarten and they prepare activities for small child, but also for their parents. And 2 years ago, or maybe more, before pandemic, we take our students to the hospital and they are prepare presentation about Christmas time in their countries, and children was really happy about it, was so excited because it was something new, something unexpected. So I think that each action can connect people, each other, is really important. And from university perspective, we can use students, our workers, but also we've got special department called Center for International Students, and we also organize a lots of events, a lots of things, because tolerance and diversity are the most important for our future.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
Here in Torres Novas, we have several projects with this kind of work with old people. And one of our projects is what we call active and informed citizenship. And we go to several villages, small villages, and we have a teacher for technology, and we get an assembly of 10 old people, and we teach them to go to public services with networking, with the internet. We help them to achieve what they don't know now, how to use the network to go and to visit several institutions that were not available before in the COVID and the pandemic years. So they don't know how to use this kind of instruments with technology. So we are teaching them to deal with them and to have access to other things that they couldn't do before. and to have access in their homes and to share this information with the other people in their villages. We call it citizenship informed and active for all people. We teach them how to use the skills to get information in a different way and give them access to information and technology and what they can do that were not possible before because they didn't have the education needed to manage these skills and manage these tools.
It's a relevant gap that is becoming more visible because, like you say, we also have this context of people going to cities, of course, it's all over Europe, and people very old staying in small villages. For example, in Torres Novas, we have a city, and then we have 100 of small villages. People are becoming very isolated, and there's a gap between accessibility to public services that, of course, are becoming more digital, with more duties we have to perform at home, and that's a good thing because it's coming more easy to everyone to access. But there's a whole generation of people that don't use the mobile devices as we do, and these kind of projects, of course, what Elvira said, it's very important. We are doing it with public libraries in our region, and they are doing these kind of trainings with old people, and they are enjoying a lot. But of course, it's a limited program because we can't reach everyone, and I think there's a huge gap between accessibility to public services, which is also a fundamental right. Of course, people have the right to reach these kind of services.
And we have also small programs, small projects to make people connected and to guarantee their health. Doctors say that sports and even in culture, dancing is important for young people to move, make them move. So we have programs for sport. I created a senior active sport. We go to small villages and they with the technician, a sport technician, and they do exercise. They get out of home and they do exercise and sometimes they get all together to know each other and do a huge class with all the people. And I created another one that started last month, that is dancing afternoons.
Wonderful.
Yes, a dancing afternoon. In a Saturday afternoon, we have a musician that is playing, and they just dance with each other. We change pairs, but they are happy because they are hearing music, they are dancing, they are moving their bodies, and they are happy, and they like it. It's a small strategy to make people move and make people get out of their houses. So dancing, it's culture. Culture gets people more happy. So we are doing these kind of projects too for all the people.
It's a great idea. We've got similar small project in last year. We prepared dance workshop called Art for Peace, and young people from 7 different countries prepare dance show for other students. So it was really nice because we also cooperating with dancers and choreographers from different countries. So I totally agree with you.
We talked a little bit about the pandemic as well. Do you have any experience how this affected the area that we are covering right now? So the human rights and the policies run by the cities. Did this affect you in any way? We know that there are some changes with the access to different services that went online due to the fact that we were forced to use different tools of communication, different tools of running businesses, etc. But do you have any experience how this affected the human rights area?
I think that one of the biggest challenges in that context was mental health.
Yes.
And still is, especially for the youth. That's one. That's what we've done during the pandemic, is to create a city center for mental health, and you could access a free psychological help through this process. It was also I don't know how to say it. We've developed this idea during the war, especially, so it would address the needs of refugees coming to Krakow last year. But I think one of the biggest issue during the pandemic was the domestic violence rise. We could observe in every statistics. The rise of domestic violence was one, but lack of possibility to help and to get support outside of your home was the main issue. If you could not reach the center for women in crisis, when you couldn't go into the crisis office, or you couldn't even be alone to talk with anyone through the phone, that was the most disturbing, I think, because we could see that the numbers are getting higher and higher. And in the same time, there was not much we could do. There have been a couple of great initiatives all over Europe with the pharmacies and the special codes. I remember during the pandemics there was a civic initiative created by a very young girl, I think 17 years old or something, in Warsaw. And she created this online shop with when you could buy creams and makeup and so on, but that was the code for something. It was like if you ordered a makeup, you ordered help, and if you ordered cream, you ordered a phone call. So there was no actual shop, but it looked like one. So you could reach for help while being with your abusive partner in the same room, and he could not know that you're calling for help. So I think those kind of initiatives were very, very important and amazingly creative. So I think there was a few very strict challenges that sort of stuck with us, and the mental health is one of that. I think we will have to address the mental health problems of youth, especially in next year, very intensively. Having also under consideration that a lot of young people are identifying also as a part of LGBTQI community, and that also it makes it even more complex because it's intersectional. It's age, but also it's a sexual orientation or gender identity. From the pandemic, I think those two topics in the context of human rights was the main issues I think I would underline.
Nina, I totally agree with you, especially about victims of violence aspect. Our students also see it, and they create special application called Umbrella. It looks like just weather app, but if you click to the umbrella, the police will come to your home and probably care about you. So it's really nice because, for example, husbands didn't know that it's a helpful application because it's look like a weather app. Mm-hmm. So this was an incredible and amazing idea, and a lot of people use it.
I'll say that first, I will say that we don't want to talk about the pandemic times anymore.
No. We all want to forget it.
Sorry.
Right?
No, I'm just joking. In Portugal, we have also the same context. Of course, I don't know the data about that, but we have reported an increasement of domestic violence situations. But the most relevant thing, I think, it's even the mental situation and the mental situation of youngsters, because that's something that we have to tackle for the next years. It's not, it doesn't disappear just in 1 or 2 years. These kids are influenced by these years that they were not able to be at school, and that's something we have to tackle with some local efforts also in the next years.
Yes, that's so very true that there are certain outcomes of the pandemics that we did not even anticipate, and now we have to figure out a way how to approach those new questions. What is your approach to cooperating with NGOs in what you're doing in relation to human rights? We talked a little bit about communication, about cooperation, about networks, about activism. Do you see a lot of NGOs working around you and doing a good job? Can you share some best practices? What is your approach to also creating this kind of cooperation with a third sector?
Yes. In our city, last Wednesday, we have a presentation for our young people with our local activity for this project. We had an NGO called Equality.pt, Portugal, and that NGO showed to young people what they were doing regards equality, gender equality, and we are cooperating with them in schools in a larger project. They go to schools, to our schools. They are with our young people, with our students, small students, still 18 years old, and they are doing special work to show them what is gender equality. So we work together with them. We have that project in a startup enterprise sector in our municipality. So we work together these questions, and we always attend with them to be with young children, just to have that ability of getting to them and to educate them with these kind of questions that is going to be part of their lives. So if it's a common question to young people. When they grow, they won't even question what is gender equality or other things, or LGBTQI plus rights, or everything, because they know what they are. They know they belong. They get to belong with all people, and so we start with the youngsters to improve this knowledge and to get to be a common sense for all.
Nina, do you have any experience in cooperation with the third sector in Krakow?
Yes, it's very important. Well, as I've mentioned before, we've been cooperating since 2019 in the Quality Council as a within Krakow's sphere of activists and people engaged in human rights topics. But we've also been funding human rights and equality projects that are run by NGO. So we have special grants for human rights projects and equality between men and women since I think 2020. So every year we can support 2 projects by one organization. In total, we have a large budget, so it's around 20 projects a year we can fund, small ones. But also we have a lot of open open process for NGO to apply to do a certain public campaign. For example, we want to do a campaign, so we do not do always this as a city hall. We invite NGO to make it to show their proposal, how would they address it, and then we choose an NGO that would provide us support while doing this campaign or a project. So it's well-established cooperation. We also give NGOs certain larger initiatives to run. And for example, we have a multicultural center for 3 years now in Krakow. It's also connected to the info point for migrants, so you can get support, legal support, psychological support. You can get support with administration, like someone can assist you during your administration and formal process with your starting to be a part of the Polish society. So the health issues and everything, you can get support there. But also it's a place for networking and meetings, and they do a lot of events to sort of make this multicultural community visible but connected and involved. And the whole project is run by an NGO. It's supported by the city. It's a city sort of initiative, but it's run by the NGO because they know what they are the closer ones to the multicultural community of Krakow. So we want to give as much voice and activeness to the NGOs because they know better than us what's needed. They have more grassroots approach, and I think it's a key during this implementation of human rights-based approach. So they have to be involved. Also, I think it's very important to make a lot of consultations and open workshops when you're creating some kind of policies. So when we did the diagnosis last year, we've invited NGOs to take part in workshops for example, when feminist organizations were asked to and invited to the workshops when they would underline the main issues in Krakow and would help us to come up with solutions that we could put in our equality policy in next few months. So I think it's important to talk to the NGOs, activists, people who are involved in grassroots help and support for different groups. So you could really address the issues that are sometimes overlooked and invisible in official data, because you will not know what's really the issue just sitting behind your desk. And the NGOs can do that, they can go deeper, they can talk to people more intensively than the City Hall. And so I believe it's the way to do things. It's obviously also a process that we are learning. It can always be improved, the way we do things. I think the civic panels, it's something new that we use in recent years. Now we have a civic panel for transportation, for example. So not only NGOs but citizens are invited in a very structured list of workshops and discussions for many months to establish the priorities for transportation policy in next years. So people have to be involved at every step, not only city employees but everyone. NGO, universities are really important. I think Polish cities did not learn to really establish networking and exchange of ideas between universities that they have in their cities. I think this collaboration is something that it can be improved and can be very creative for us. Universities do a lot of analysis and research, as universities do, and cities needs this research. So I think we have to sort of cooperate, and it's I think it's great that this discussion is also being introduced in the university context, because it's also a very it gives inspiration, and it's, I think, a very good platform to collaborate.
Nina, I totally agree. From my perspective, I think that we can't exist without NGOs organization, because they've got totally different tools than university, and I think that only together we can create amazing project like this, for example. But also only together we can change our experience and our points of view. So I totally agree, and I think that I can told it. We are always open to cooperate it with city, not only with Łódź, but also with Kraków and different cities. So just call me.
Wonderful.
Of course. This is also part of my experience. That's why I asked the question about the NGOs, because as you know, I am representing the third sector, and I have this experience for more than 20 years now, working with the third sector and also building networks and trying to cooperate with different institutions. I would say this implementation of grassroots approach is a key in that sense. I couldn't agree more. Elvira, do you want to add anything to the discussion, or because we somehow lost you? You've lost the connection. I hope you were able to follow us.
I don't think she's.
I don't think so. Yeah, something is.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh,
now,
wonderful! Now
okay.
it's working. Okay. We were just exchanging a little bit more the ideas about the importance of the third sector and the NGOs in relation to human rights, and also the networks of different organizations such as, for example, universities cooperating with the cities and NGOs in relation to creating new policies and consulting in relation to the problems faced by the citizens. I have the last round question to all of you, since we are getting closer to the end of the first panel. And my question is related to the situation that we are experiencing for quite some time now. So my question is how the situation of human rights activism has changed when the war in Ukraine started. Do you have that kind of experience? Did this situation affect your areas of activities in relation to human rights? Who would like to start?
Well, we have migrants, refugees, and we also, like many other countries, receive the refugees here in Torres Novas. Several buses came here, and fortunately, we had Ukrainian people living here for several years that help us to receive them and do everything possible to make their living here the best in the best way. That didn't affect directly our people. That made us understand that everything that Ukrainian people are passing there in Ukraine could be here. So many people were eager to help. So we create a volunteer group to help them. That didn't affect directly our way of living here, but the prices are raising still now, and so the gas for vehicles raised a lot. So people understood that is the impact of the war in Europe, the war in Ukraine, but they didn't question what we do in our policy to deal with this were not unaccepted. We accept more or less what we are passing through. We accept that we have to help others, and so they can come. We accept, but there are still some people that the populism are raising too, because there are some people, the general population can accept, but there are some people that are shouting with this kind of help, not much for Ukrainian people, but for migration. Populism is rising too.
Thank you.
Well, I think in context of Ukraine, it was a good opportunity to city to learn the horizontal approach. We are very sort of being used to work in this sectorial like silos, which is education, social issues, culture, and so on. And with the such large migration and with such a high number of refugees becoming citizens of Krakow in such a short time, it was very, I think, sort of fast learning for us, that we have to approach this in every department. That not only one department that is involved in multicultural projects will address the issues. We will have to be involved as a whole. So education department, culture department, institutions, healthcare, and so on. Those all sectors had to be involved in building sort of an inclusive path to citizenship, the local citizenship for people who came to Krakow, and I think it was very important experience to have that every person who works on certain issues inside of the city had to take under consideration how this decision will address the situation of people from Ukraine coming to Krakow. And if we learn that in the context of migrants, we can learn that approach and we can adapt this approach in the context of women, seniors, youth, and so on. So we've already done this during the Ukraine crisis in Krakow. So I think it's really great to sort of underline this, that it's not a new thing, that we do not propose a revolution with human rights approach. It's something that we've already done. So we can just do this in the context of different group. And I think that helps to, and it was a good outcome of this obviously a horrible context of the war. But I think we've learned very quickly what does it mean to really change the perspective from the idea of universal cities for all. That sounds better, but it doesn't really mean anything, because if it's really for all, we have to take in account who's really the all and who's in this universal group of citizens. And if we know that we have migrants and refugees from Ukraine, so we can ask the same questions in different groups, and it enables us to do this even more successfully. So this context, apart from all the initiatives that have been established in recent years, I think it was very important for us as a learning process also. It's been also the great opportunity to show the context of intersectional discrimination and intersectional experiences, because it was very obvious from the beginning that this migration has a gender, and 90% of people coming was women with children. So they needed different things. So at some point, the administration and different institutions, central, regional, police, hospitals, and so on, they had to take into account that they are women, that they are sometimes pregnant women, that they are women with kids, that they are women with disabilities, that they are seniors with disabilities, that they need different healthcare. So you have to take under consideration that you have to support everything connected to the women's health. That you have to it was in a very simple things. For example, you had to remember that women obviously need hygienic products. So in every migrant center, you had to have a hygiene products. And I don't think anyone would thought about that 2 years ago. Now everybody has. So I think in those little experiences, there was a lot of interesting also context with this gendered migration, and it was so obvious, and people sort of understood why we talk so much about feminist city and gender mainstreaming, because in everyday life you do not really see this context, but when in this perspective it became obvious. Okay, so women are coming, So they need different things. They have different experiences. They can experience violence. They can experience sexual violence. We have to address this. We cannot really just sort of overlook the topic. So I think it's the context of Ukraine. Obviously, it was and it still is a very challenging and massive obligation for cities to address it in a proper and successful way. It's also a very important process for every city to become so multi or dual cultural in this short period of time. We have a lot of citizens from Ukraine. It's very visible. The language is you can hear the language everywhere. So it's also something that I think as a society, we've been faced for the first time on such a scale. And it's very important also to have a lot of tools and address this situation properly to build a multicultural education in schools. So to address the possible tensions between people, between young people, between parents, between teachers and students. Those problems can also erase any number of situations that can be considered discriminatory, and we have to know this beforehand. We have to see this multicultural process and this migration process as also and then very important moment for us to introduce the equality education and anti-discrimination education. So we would ready for the tensions and problems that cannot come up because they always come up, and we have to be prepared. And I hope we will, but obviously the education and school is another big subject that maybe later or another time we could discuss.
Yes, that's a topic for definitely for another discussion that we would gladly organize. Octavia, do you have any comments? Since you also have an experience in the Center for Migration Studies.
I totally agree with Nina and Elvira. For us, it was full of emotions time because we've got students from Ukraine, but also from Russia. So we were sitting together and talking about human rights, about tolerance, about just being human. So it was difficult. It was very specific. But also we need very fast organized support for Ukrainian students, but also for students from Russian, because they were here and they still are at our university. So we prepare a special psychological support center. Students can call them and talking about mental health, talking about all other problems. So I think that we can't escape from it because it was a problem and it still is a problem. I mean, we should talking and educate people, but also academic teachers. I mean, not only was very happy that we still have students from Russian.
Thank you. That was also our way to introducing the second panel that is going to be here after the break. I would like to thank you all for this fruitful discussion. I would like to thank you all for sharing your experience. I think what we can take from this first panel is the fact that we need cooperation. It's all based on common understanding and communication. It's also using the knowledge of the organizations that know best and are working on the grassroots level with the citizens or with the people that we are designing the policies and addressing initiatives towards. So once again, I would like to thank you for participating in the panel on human rights in the context of town policy. we shall have a break of 10 minutes till 12. That's the information for all of you who are following us via Facebook and also on the Click meeting here. So we will have a 10-minute break, and then we will be joined here once again with a panel on towns facing migration and war crisis. So we will be working some more on the topics and discussion that was started here. There is also one remark to all of you joining us on Click Meeting and also joining us on Facebook. If you have any comments, questions for discussion, this is a space to use it in the comments section. That will be also useful for us in the summary of the event. That will be the last session today. So if you have any comments, questions, both to the panelists and also you would like to express your experience, your best practices that you've implemented or you've seen or you've taken part in, then that's also the way to do it via comments here or via comments on the live Facebook transmission that we have right now. So thank you once again, and we'll see each other after the break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Now I would like to thank Eva for moderating the first panel. Thank you so much, Eva. And I would like to thank Octavia for taking part in this interesting discussion. Thank you.
I have a see you, Eva. See you, everyone. You have a great city, Woods. You have been there last year, so it's a pity not to be over there.
Yeah.
See you. It was nice to meet you.
It's a pity that we are not doing it physically, but it's not the last chance. I mean, we can do it either way.
And we also prepare small gifts. And we also prepare small gifts for you. I hope that Eva will give you.
Since we will be, I'm talking to the project partners. Since we will be seeing each other in Portugal, so then I can give you the gifts that the university has prepared for the panelists.
Oh, thank you very much.
See you soon.
See you.
Thank you.
See you.
Network of Towns project, hosted locally here in Łódź as a partnership of 3 institutions: European Initiative Society, an NGO, Socioeconomic Observatory, a think tank cooperating with that NGO, and the University of Humanities here in Łódź, Poland. Now we will focus on the second panel that we had an introduction in the previous discussion a little bit, the towns facing migration and work crisis. The panel will be hosted by Weronika Mastalerz.
Hello everyone, my name is Weronika Mastalerz and I have the pleasure of moderating the first panel. My guests are Ewa Gabrielak, Tomasz Barszcz and Frania Buczar. Welcome everyone. During this discussion, we'll be considering the impact of migrants on the development of cities, the challenges for urban policy, and other related issues. Let us now move to the first question. Maybe, Tomasz, let's start from you. What are the benefits and challenges of city and the resident accepting migrants?
Hello, everyone. I think the major benefit of accepting refugees and migrants should be the people themselves, because in nowadays cities are struggling with low population, and the migrants and the refugees could be a valuable source for new citizens. Mostly, as in the last crisis in Ukraine, we were talking mostly about refugees who are young people, pretty young people, and they are willing to get job, to work, to settle down in the safe country. But the downside is that when we talking about Ukraine, there are mostly young women with children. So first, for the local governments, for the NGOs, there's a case of providing the daycare for their children, and then mothers can try to get work and be valuable citizens for the city.
And Frania, what about you? Do you want to share with us your opinion?
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so as we're seeing in most European countries, we are all dealing with the aging population and a smaller number of young people, like my previous speaker also said, and also young people staying in school longer and entering the labor market at a later age, which means that less money is going to the pension fund, and we are all seeing this in different countries. So we are trying to raise the age of the pension, etc. And this is actually why we need more workforce, and more workforce is coming from the countries that are not, for example, Slovenia. So we have in European countries this trend of immigrants coming to work and also to study in our countries. And it is the actual benefit of migration, because it means that we have labor, basically. For example, now in Novo Mesto, we see that certain jobs are almost no longer appealing to the local population. In restaurants, for example, or in bars, almost all workers are immigrants currently. But also, immigrants should not only be for this lower paying jobs. For example, in my municipality, we now have an example that for like a year or so, we are dealing with the lack of the pediatrician, for doctor for children. We have had some non-permanent ones, but no permanent for over a year. And it is most likely that the next pediatrician that will come to work in our municipality will be an immigrant. So we also have immigrants in better paying jobs with more expertise. And it is not something that we should be afraid of, because immigrants always bring rich culture and diverse knowledge. the challenge is usually how to peacefully achieve the integration of different cultures. And it has to be done in both directions. Immigrants have to learn about the Slovenian, for example, in our case, culture and our way of life, but also we should be learning from them, experiencing their culture and their way of life, because it makes for a more diverse society and acceptance in general. Sadly, there are still always some xenophobic groups who say that the influx of migrants will be connected to crime and violence. But it is not something that we're actually experiencing in cities where migrant integration is done well. For example, in Novo Mesto, we are working with for a long time on migrant integration, and it is done pretty well. And this is where our NGO is active, and we don't see a big crime or violence or anything related to migration because they are all very well integrated. They're here for work, for study, and they become part of our society. And for example, now we have a large group of migrants from Ukraine. And when it comes to this group of migrants, there have been almost no negative comments in the media, as opposed to some other groups of migrants who have been coming here. The Ukrainians were very well accepted, and they have very well integrated into our society. They're mostly working and studying and going to school, and you cannot see any difference, basically. So the negative comments are usually related to immigrants coming from countries that are a bit more different to us, mostly from Muslim countries, also those who look a bit different. And the truth is that these immigrants would also adapt a lot easier and faster if there was no attack in the media. And if you, from the start, if you offer them help with like bureaucratic procedures and give them opportunities like job security and education, there is no reason for them to turn to other sources of work, basically, and you have a very happy and diverse society. It might seem a bit idealistic now, but it's the truth, basically. The proper integration works both ways, and if it is successful, we can all live in very good coexistence.
And Eva, do you want to add something more?
I would say that Frania just said everything that was coming to my mind. So thank you, thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. That definitely it's a question of stereotypes that we are trying to tackle and facing. The role of the media is definitely very, very important. In order to facilitate the process of integration, in order to show the truth and not the stereotypical understanding or misunderstanding, basically, of different cultures. So I would say that there is a lot of benefits for the city itself in accepting refugees, in accepting migration. First of all, in relation to demographics, as Tomek already said, in relation to the aging societies that the whole Europe is facing this demographic crisis, also in relation to the integration of refugees and migrants when aided properly into the labor market. So I think there is a lot of benefits for the cities and for the towns in accepting migration. Of course, this is a question of proper training of the civil servants offering this kind of aid, using the knowledge of the grassroots organization, using the knowledge of different NGOs that are actively working in this process, because in our experience here in Łódź or in Poland, basically, we know that this current migration crisis and war in Ukraine was a non-standard situation, and not a lot of towns or civil servants as such had experience in this type of aid. So this was a question of using the knowledge and experience of NGOs that have been working actively with multicultural dialogue, with integration, etc.
I couldn't agree more. And let's move to my second question. What actions are non-governmental organizations taking to improve situation for migrants in cities?
So I think NGOs are closest to the people, so they can quickly define those people's needs or define the problems that they are facing. NGOs are more flexible than local government, for example, and can act really quickly to avoid spreading the problems or enlarging them to a really big thing that couldn't be possibly like dealt with. And I think NGOs in Poland in general, but also in Aleksandrów Łódzki, did a great job taking care of this crisis last year. And I couldn't find a better solutions that could deal with this better. Non-government organizations in together with local government, together with citizens networks, working together on problem can get the best solutions. So just for me, it's real important that it's coordinated all together by some single council or single staff which can define the problems and can use different organization for different types of problems and not working separately, because sometimes when like three organizations would like to help, they're all together can cause a bit of damage to this problem and not solving it at all. So communication and cooperation between these NGOs and local government, who has the budget for this types of crisis situation, is essential for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had this when I remember mid-February, so a few days after the war broke in Ukraine. We as an NGO, as a socioeconomic observatory, we had this experience of looking for volunteers who could communicate in either Russian or Ukrainian language, and also knew at least basic Polish to be able to help the refugees that were arriving here to our city as a capital of the region. And I remember that since we had this experience as a think tank, we had this experience with people working in academia, so we were contacting our students who haven't left to their home countries yet. We are also contacting different NGOs that we knew, working with Ukrainian minority here, working with Belarusian minority here, since we had this kind of networks of connections. And this is referring also what Tomasz said, that we did not want to coordinate any activities on our own or we did not want to try to figure out, okay, what is needed right now, since we knew this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 organizations, but we have contacted the coordinators on the regional level, since they were very quickly establishing a network of people and then telling the volunteers, okay, you will be needed at the train station to coordinate this. You will be needed in the refugee center to coordinate that. You will be needed to operate the telephone helpline, etc. So this was, I think, and it was a matter of like 2 or 3 days that we figured out, okay, we are not doing it on our own, because we are basically causing more trouble than necessary, and there is enough chaos around. So we decided to organize this kind of becoming like a hub of, networking and contacts, and then giving this opportunity and the volunteers to coordination center to be able to make it work better, basically.
And Frania, do you want to share with us your opinion?
Yes. Okay. So I come from an NGO. So I'm a coordinator at the NGO DRPD, and I'm here in Slovenia. And in my experiences, the NGOs are actually fulfilling the gap left by the governmental processes, basically. And they do a lot of work that the other organizations are either not seeing or don't really care as much about. So, for example, here in Novo Mesto in Slovenia, our organization takes a very wholesome approach and tries to help immigrants with basically every part of their life. So the most important thing is we have a daily center for children and youngsters where they come after school and they learn Slovenian language, but also our staff and our volunteers help them with their schoolwork and homework. We work together with schools, with teachers. They tell us what they need to learn and how to basically learn these things. And they work both individually and in groups. So after they are done with their homeworks and the school lessons, basically, they also participate and we organize for them leisure activities. So this is actually a very important part. For example, the Slovenian and other local children, they in the afternoon, they go to different lessons, either, music lessons or dance or sport activities. And often these things are not free. Their parents have to pay for them to attend these activities. And the thing is that most of the immigrant children come from poor backgrounds, and their parents are usually working all day, and they cannot really provide afternoon activities at home, and they cannot pay for activities that are expensive. So our daily center also offers different leisure activities like sports and dance lessons and creative workshops, so that they basically have something to do in their free time, but also to provide socialization and basically so that they can spend their leisure time more quality in a more qualitative way. Also, for example, when it comes to dance lessons, it can be quite fun for children, but also it can be a way for them to be in touch with their own culture. So this is quite important. And also what I wanted to say is that some of these children, they grew up with DRPD. They come to our daily center as children after school, where they learn learn Slovenian language and become a part of this community that we are creating. And then as they are getting older, they are helping their peers, their younger children that are coming to our daily center as volunteers. And as they become youngsters and they don't need as much help, they are now volunteers, and they can also participate in our international projects. So they can travel for very low money, basically, and they can have this qualitative life that the other peers have as well. And they really grew up with our organization. and they learn competences and non-formal learning activities, and also with school and everything. But also when it comes to adult integration of migrants, as I mentioned, we also provide language lessons, Slovenian, especially to the groups that need them more. Currently, we have about 100 Ukrainians here who come for language lessons in groups. They learn mostly, but we also help them with other things, from bureaucratic procedures to housing. We have a cultural mediator that speaks Slovenian and Ukrainian and Russian, and they can basically turn to her for help for everything. She can go with them to the doctor because they either don't speak Slovenian that well yet, to help interpret, but we also help them find apartments and housing and furniture. And we found, for example, bicycles for children and like all of these different things that everybody needs, but maybe you don't really think about it. And we have mentioned a few times today that immigrant women are usually more socially excluded than men, especially when we're talking about groups. For example, here in Nova Mesta, we have immigrant women from Kosovo and those from like Albanian background who live in either Kosovo and Macedonia and some other places as well. For them, they are a bit more socially excluded because they are mainly stay-at-home moms. So they don't get a part of the community as fast. They mostly just exist in their own community with other migrant women from the same background. So it is more difficult for them to learn Slovenian, and we also often offer classes for them, and not just the Slovenian language lessons, but different classes. For example, they also learn some digital competences so that they can apply to jobs and they familiarize themselves with the system of Slovenia so that they can actually have enough competences, they can feel confident enough to go to their children's school, for example, to have a parent-teacher conference or something. Because if they're not integrated into society, they don't go to that. And it's an important part. And we also give them some basic skills that can help them enter the labor market. Also, for immigrants who have gone through traumatic experiences, we try to offer psychological support, although this is still a bit difficult to achieve, also because psychologists can be expensive and we usually need governmental funding to do these programs. But also it is important, we like to celebrate cultural diversity. We organize every year a very large event called the Week of Culture. It's going to happen in June this year. And basically, we invite all of these different people from different cultures to present their culture through dance, through music, through cuisine, because always food brings people together. And it's a positive experiences for them and for our local community of people so that they can get to know each other's culture in a very positive environment, in a very positive way. And we can this way also create community with the local citizens, not just the communities of immigrants. So yes, this is what I wanted to say. Maybe just to add that the governmental institutions are relying a bit too much on NGOs, because the NGOs are doing all the important work, and sometimes there is a lack of cooperation from the governmental institutions. There is something that could or should be fixed, but because we have limited resources and are usually understaffed, overworked, and it would be great if government could really do their part as well.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. This is also my experience, and this was also experience of a lot of NGOs, especially at the very beginning of war, that we had this feeling that NGOs or the third sector is doing the work, whereas the governmental authorities are telling, okay, we've done this, we've done that, and I know a lot of NGOs that were watching this news relations and were telling, okay, you are doing it? No, I thought we were doing it. So this is I would say a lack of coordination in a sense, and I also agree that a lot of NGOs are doing a lot of work on a voluntary basis with no or very insufficient funding. So that's another problem that should be definitely solved with proper funding.
That's a very good point. Thank you. And let's move to my next question. What initiatives do migrants themselves integrate into their new place of residence at the job market? Tomasz, what do you think?
I think the best thing that they can do is to communicate with each other and stay in contact, because when you even if we are somewhere abroad, it's good to have someone from your own country to rely on. Yeah, to ask questions, to ask for help, and especially when there's a language barrier, it's better to be in a group of people that already did this and that, organized something, or were finding a job, or were visiting some institutions for some sort of things to get by. And I think the most important thing will be this constant contact with using of social media, for example, as it was in Aleksandrów-Łódzki. There were special groups on Facebook where people from Ukraine could get help, and we also add ourselves to this group to provide this all basic infos. We translated it into Ukraine, so it was like once again the communication is the key here, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's the question of creating a network and using the existing network. I mean, we have a different experience with different waves of migration, because it's I mean, definitely the scale is much different than we know from the previous waves of migration that are present in Europe. But this way or another, using the networks and contacts, that's one thing. But what's most important, I think, from what you said, Tomasz, is also engaging local organization or local authorities in that networks, because then you have an access to verified information, to different public services that can verify if this job offer is valid, if this offer of, I don't know, kindergarten or nursery for children is valid and proper. If this kind of offer related to health sector is also a proper one, because from experience of working with different groups of Ukrainians, we also heard that there is and it's really sad that this kind of situation was also a place for using their insufficient knowledge of language or culture and trying to trick them in paying for different services, for example. So this is basically a criminal offense, we can say, that was reported also to us several times, because we were, as an NGO, we were also offering, since we have this experience in the area of labor market, and we had this network of different organizations and employers who were willing to offer jobs, but we knew that the first thing that was necessary was the knowledge of the native language, the Polish language, that could not be accomplished like really fast. But then helping with the the application documents with the diplomas, etc. So we were involved in that. But we also got to know that there were certain situations that those, because they were mostly women, because as we said, this wave of migration is also different because it's mostly women with children. So they were also experiencing a lot of weird situations with people asking them for money to translate the CV or to translate the certain application papers or to print those, and people were really surprised because we had this offer of several weeks, certain days, just an open office at the NGO to be able to consult your papers or to be able to print your papers or to be able to get to know our network of employers or organizations that were looking for staff at the moment. So this is key to have a network of the people that you know and trust, but also have within the network a person who can verify if that is true, who can be in contact with the local authorities or the civil servants that are responsible for the areas of support that you're asking for.
And Frania, share with us your ideas.
So, as always, the language is the first step for the socialization and integration of migrants, but also it is important that they can participate in the local community. If they can get connected, like Eva said, to different organizations, and if this organization can also help them connect with other stakeholders in the community. It is important that they meet other people from the local area, not just other immigrants, but also the local people, so that they can have positive experiences from one another, and that they can become a part of the community. In this way, it is easier for them to receive any sort of help when they need it. But for example, also those who have immigrants, for example, who have been here longer, that they can help other immigrants who are just coming now here with either the bureaucratic procedures or with finding work or with finding apartments, etc. So these communities are very important. And it is also good to take part in local events, for example, and even better if the local community, for example, the city or the municipality or schools are organizing these events, not just the NGOs. For example, that in school they have, I don't know, a Christmas celebration for Ukrainian children as well, so that they do not completely lose touch with their own community, so that they can also get gifts, for example, like their peers. So they are very small things, but they can be very important when it comes to integration. And one thing I also wanted to mention, it is also related to what our NGO, the RPD, does. So basically, we are a regional NGO hub that connects different stakeholders and NGOs, but also we are promoting that the groups of people are starting their own NGOs. So, for example, if we have a large group of people from Bosnia, for example, in Slovenia, we promote that they organize themselves into their own NGO, into their own association. For example, now we now have, because the Bosnian diaspora is quite big here, they have a cultural artistic association called Kud Sevdah, and they organize different events and they present their culture to the local community. And also it is a chance for them to keep in touch with their roots now that they're living in a different community. And different similar associations exist for other groups of migrants as well, and it is a great way that they can have this official organization that they can also turn to for help and for cultural integration, basically. So I think this is what I wanted to say. Yes.
Okay, great. And what are the best practices for cities to integrate migrants and strengthen local communities?
Well, definitely networking and trying to basically to diagnose and look for the NGOs or the activists that are doing their job and are doing it well. So not creating anything new out of the idea that, okay, it's needed, so maybe I should try to do it because maybe I don't know how to. So looking for networks and looking for people who are experienced in that sense. Also, I would say now it's of course the situation is much different than a year ago, but still using the knowledge of different organizations and different institutions. So for example, using the knowledge of the academia and the migration center that is established at the University of Łódź. They have a lot of research done right now. I know it's much easier now than the year ago when we did not have that data, and the data from from the borders, the statistics were contradicting one another, and there was a big chaos. So even planning how to help was very tricky because you did not know who are you helping with and what kind of problems will you be facing when organizing this help. So that's one thing. Basically looking for experts that do their job well and then trying to integrate them in your activities.
Yeah, and maybe create the opportunities to integrate people from Ukraine and also people from Ukraine with our citizens by making some sort of events that like showing their culture to each other. In Alexandrov, we when we get the first like wave of migrants, we found that some of them are doing some painting. There are musicians there as well, and then we organized some sort of exhibition to show their work to the citizens of Aleksandrów Łódzki, and to like make the opportunity to integrate, to know each other. And to like prevent any type of social inclusion.
Mm-hmm. So basically creating a safe space for integration and showing what you're doing, what's your experience, and in what sense can you integrate with the local community, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Frania, what is your opinion about that?
I agree with what you said. So the positive approach is really what makes a difference. So, for example, if you see that the city officials are open to this migrant integration, it can make a huge difference. If the opinion of the city officials is positive, then the opinion of the citizens would be more positive as well. And it is good that they support and promote diversity. This is like the first step. Also, offering support and promotion for NGOs that help with the migrant integration is also important. If the politicians are attacking NGOs in the media, this is not a good way for them to be successful with their work. Basically, this is something we have seen in the past, but not so much currently, thankfully, in Slovenia. And in general, a very wholesome approach. So from simplifying and offering help with bureaucratic procedures. Now, this is in Slovenia, in our city, always the biggest problem for immigrants. The bureaucracy is so difficult, and the procedures are long and difficult, and they always need help. And it would be really great if the cities would actually offer help with it. For example, when the immigrants go to the administrative unit for anything, any papers that they have to do. NGOs try to help, but always we do not have all the required experiences. Offering quality language lessons as well. They need to learn to speak the language so that they can communicate, so they can even go to the bureaucratic for the administrative unit to fix their issues, whatever they have. So this is quite important from the city approach. But when it comes to the local community, also just offering joint activities where they can mix, when they can learn from one another, when where they can participate together with different communities, from sports to events of all types, anything related to integration. It is this pastime, this leisure time is a time during which we can actually get to know our communities and get to know one another, basically. And a good example, like a best practice that we have recently seen in Slovenia, is, for example, a ticket for the free public transport for Ukrainian refugees. So in the past year, especially when they started coming here, I'm not sure if this is still in place. I think it is, but I do not have the latest data. Basically, anyone with a Ukrainian passport could take any bus or public transport for free. Now, this is actually really useful because we are from a rural area and it is difficult to get around. Like, you cannot go just anywhere on foot or on a bicycle. So you need to take the bus or the train to go even to the administrative unit or to school or to a hospital. And in the free time, they can go to fitness and they can become a bigger part of the society. In the summer, they could, I don't know, the parents could take their children to the pool in the nearby town. So it is important that they have a means to go around. Even if it's such a minor thing as a public transport, it can make a big difference. But of course, the public transport has to be well organized.
Yes, in Poland it was a similar solution. On the regional level, at the very beginning, with the first wave of refugees coming from Ukraine, it was valid not only with the public transport within the city, but also like regional trains run by. There is a set of trains run by the region. So, and it's not only connecting all the cities within the region, but also going to Warsaw. So this was a temporary solution, I think, for either 3 months or half a year. I know that Warsaw also had this similar solution with the free public transport for within the city, just as you said, to allow for going to do certain services or permits, etc. Especially if you don't know how the transport works and how long will it take you from point A to point B, and how long will you spend in the queue in one or other office. So that was really helpful for the people to use the public transport freely. We had also this experience, as we refer to best practices. We also had this experience with a culture center here in Łódź that was normally ordinarily a culture facility, but it became a refugee center for several months. So there was a lot of volunteers working here, but also the culture center as such would not just want to become a place of stay. With provision of basic information in relation to legalizing your stay or legalizing your documents or work permits, etc. But they also offered certain activities for youth and children during the time when the parents were working on those documents and permits. So that was also one of the activities that they came up with really quickly because of the structure, the demographic structure of the migrants that were coming here. Tomek, do you have any experience in that? Because I know that you're also doing specific things, supporting specific families as a program of the city, right?
Yeah. we have in Aleksandrów-Łódzki we have a program that that provides the place of accommodation, like the apartment for the families in need from abroad. This apartment is from the social help of the city, so it's like a social apartment, but it's like free for several months, and then just a little like rent expenses. So yeah, it's the best way to give like a head start to some families, especially those families in need. This program was was created for repatriants from Kazakhstan, because many people from Alexandrov migrate to Kazakhstan, and now they want to come back, and these apartments were used in this nowadays crisis as well.
Looking to I mean, remembering one other best practice that I've seen that it was done not by an NGO but by a business, so private sector. We had this experience with a company who is working in the healthcare sector. They at the very beginning they knew that the provision of healthcare would be also a challenge, so they have organized since they're running private healthcare institutions, but with the in the Polish context, but with the contract from the health fund funded by the government. So they decided to employ translators there at the very beginning. They also issued a special promotion campaign, because they are running both healthcare facilities and pharmacies. So they were running a special media campaign, offering special cards like ID cards for the Ukrainians, so that they could easily get access to translation and assistance in the healthcare facility. They used their own IT guys to create Ukrainian version of their registration systems, etc. So it was really done very quickly, and we got to know each other, because we as an NGO, as the European Initiative Society, were running nurseries in four nurseries in the region. So we are offering and providing care for children from the age of 1 to 3 years old. So they have contacted us because we had this experience of establishing nurseries and kindergartens. And their next idea was to establish a kindergarten or a day care facility, because another branch of their business was employing people with experience in accountancy and finances and Excel knowledge. So you don't need that much Polish in order to work with finances. So they had this idea of recruiting people like on the spot, and they saw the need that they need to provide a place for the children to be taken care of from 8 to 4 p.m. So that was another best practice, and another one that that is also specific to our region was the coordination of the aid towards the children from the orphanages, because that was another big activity that was taking that was done here, because our region was also responsible for coordinating aid towards hundreds of children that were in the orphanages in Ukraine, and they were transported here, and the aid and care for them was organized also in our region.
Yeah, and I have to mention that I work for the local self-government, but also I work for NGO as a volunteer. So we together, our forces combined, can act very quick, and that what we basically done. We created the network. We created the database of people who are willing to help in sort of transport from the border, in sort of inviting people to their houses and giving them shelter, in sort of adding funds to our raise money fund that we created in our NGO. When we created this fund, some companies answer as well, and some of the biggest companies in Alexandrov, like ABB, Procter and Gamble, had a really huge help that was later on used to provide shelter, to provide the food, to provide all these basic services that is needed. So yeah, I think that all these good people combined in one network did their job really well.
Now, I would like to ask you, what are the benefits and challenges of citizen networking during the migration crisis?
It's probably the same that I just previously said, but I think this citizen network, it's the best way to act quickly. When you have like people who are offering their services to help each other, it's really, well, maybe not really, but it's quite easy to coordinate these groups and get the help to those who need it now, not tomorrow. They are now at the border, so we should go now and bring them to Alexandrov, and tomorrow morning they need food because they are living people. So there are plenty of things to provide to people who sometimes come without anything, just with this boots on. So yeah, networking in this case, it's crucial because but the downside is that there are always people who would like to like make a profit on this crisis situation, and it's like our job to locate them, to verify all these people who are offering their services, because there are sometimes cases when, for example, a driver offers their help, goes to the border, and then offers their help, but for the money. And it's obviously not the way we're helping those people. So yeah, there's a lot of work with coordination, with checking all these elements in this network for the good of the whole action.
And Frania, do you have the experience connected to this topic?
Yes, I agree. It is really great when people come together and help in times of crisis. We have seen examples of this in Slovenia in the past as well, especially during the Ukraine crisis now. For example, when we started receiving immigrants from Ukraine, we would put out a call that we need, for example, bicycles. And we received so many calls for people that they have a bicycle that their children are no longer using, they have outgrown it, and we really collected quite a few of them for pretty much all the Ukrainian children that we have. And also for furniture and for clothes, because they mostly came here with their winter clothes, but then it was the summer and they needed new clothes. So the community here is quite great, and if you ask them and if they want to help, they really do. And not just, for example, the bicycle things, it wasn't just the people, it was also the bicycle shops in the area. They asked me, okay, what do you have, what do you need? And they would bring whichever we didn't yet have, for like the sizes, and the ages that they needed. So it was really great. Also, like you mentioned, the housing. So the first Ukrainian family that came here, like the system was not really operational yet, let's say. So they came here, and there were these kind people from the area that have the weekend house, we call them here, so basically a cottage and vineyard that they offered to them to sleep in for as long as they needed to, basically before we could find them a different housing. And then we would ask the community if anybody knows about some apartment or something that is being let out for a lower price. And we have a very strong community, and that they really did help, and they offered a lot. And it is amazing when the community comes together and helps. You can achieve so much just with the help of the people from the area. And you mentioned also the challenges, and so this is the benefit, is that the community is strong and helpful when they want to be. But a challenge is always the xenophobia, especially in the media and in social networks, where everybody can say what they want, and it is not always kind, and it can also provide a bit of a negative backlash. And we haven't seen a lot of negative comments when it comes to Ukrainians, because they are usually very well accepted. But when it comes to other migrants, there have been a lot more negative comments and negative view from the media, for example. And also I wanted to say that here we are trying to basically connect communities with each other. And this negative backlash that I have mentioned is not always from the native Slovenians. So, for example, we also have quite a bit of not refugees, but immigrants here from Kosovo, who are of Albanian background. And they have a lot of tension between the Serbians, and we also have a lot of Serbians here. So it is difficult to do activities with them if these two groups of people sometimes do not want to cooperate. So even in our daily centers, when the children from Kosovo come to their lessons and their activities, you will not see many children from Serbia. And it really pains me to see that sometimes the immigrants who have been in the same situation are not willing to help other immigrants. So this is one challenge that we're also working on. So but it is great when the people do come together and when the networking is successful.
Eva, do you have more experience about this topic?
Well, I think the benefits is I totally agree with both of you. It's showing that the people can get united over the cause and can do amazing things. The challenge is, I think, that without proper support of those volunteers, it's a short-lived enthusiasm quite often, because everybody has their own life, the job, the other expenditures that you need to cover, and of course you can be active and you can be helpful, but for a certain amount of time. So this can be averting the crisis, but then the proper institutionalized funded support is needed to cover, especially in the situation of such a big crisis as the one that we are talking about. As for the challenges as well, I think that a lot of us, a lot of NGOs, a lot of us privately were being just tested. What can we accomplish? So that is amazing to get to know people and enthusiasts who are similar to us and work together. So that's one thing. But of course, on the other side, the other flip of the coin, as Tomek said, also we saw, especially in the social media, a lot of reports of different kinds of crimes. Let's not call it differently, crimes committed of people, using advantage of the people in need. So that's the thing. But luckily, the authorities responsible for dealing with those were also really active and really helpful. So that's a plus.
Okay, I think that we have already discussed some answers to my next question, but I would like to develop this topic a little bit more. That's why now I would like to ask you, how can cities more contribute to providing appropriate living and working conditions for migrants, as well as preventing situation of social exclusion?
I would like to broaden this, because we talked a little bit about the living conditions and the social flats, or the private network of people who we know who had a spare flat or who had a summer house that they could offer. But that's a temporary solution, of course. So that's one thing. I would like to also add to those sets of activities, education, because from the experience that we had right now, we know that the sector of education is really important, and it's really tricky to plan education of children and youth. Because especially, I'm looking at you, Tomek, because you have an experience also in that relation in your city. Because education as such is also part of the local policy, and assigning money for that, and preparing a budget for that, and preparing infrastructure, preparing schools, preparing teachers, preparing assistants in order to facilitate the integration of the students, right? Yeah. So there is a lot of tricky questions related to that topic.
Especially when the schools are overcrowded.
Yeah, already.
Yeah, and you need to take another action and create another class or integrate some Ukrainian kids to Polish class. But you must provide a translator or additional Polish teacher who also knows Ukrainian. So it was quite difficult, and all our schools faced those problems. We partially found a solution in other Ukrainian migrants who were Polish teachers in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So we had the opportunity to give them a job and fix a problem with lack of Polish teachers who know Ukrainian.
Yeah, we had similar experiences in NGO with nurseries, with one of the nurseries, because we've employed a girl from Ukraine who has experience in working with small children, and this also opened another opportunity for accepting children with the Ukrainian background as well. Although when we think about children from the ages of 1 to 3, then not all of them are. I mean, they're just started talking. So So that's a different situation. I would also say that in case of education sector, what's the most important is the integration of children and youth, because they learn the fastest and they can also be this kind of facilitator and an interpreter or translator for the parents or grandparents that they come with. So that's also really important. As for the living conditions, I would say that I don't know any working solutions, like permanent solutions that are working well. But that's not my area of expertise, so maybe that's why I didn't came across with that. As for the labor market facilitation, I think it went quite well, and especially with the diagnosis of the situation, like having the data about people's background, people's education, diplomas, etc. It was a process, of course, with accepting qualifications, because that's another set of rules that we need to comply. And of course, like the education system that we've adopted as part of the European Union is a little bit different with the ECTS credit points, etc. and the Ukrainian system, but the Ministry of Science and Education issued this kind of guidelines for what kind of qualifications and certain educational background is equivalent to what we know here. So that also went quite smoothly, I would say. So that was one of the best practices employed quite quickly. Although from my experience, the question of organizational matters within the schools and kindergartens, and of course additional funding that was needed was a really big challenge.
And Frania, what about you?
From what I can hear, you have a lot of really good examples from Poland, and it is really nice to hear. Here in Slovenia, the biggest problem when it comes to immigrants and the state is always the bureaucracy. Everybody is always
here as well. It's not yes.
Here, everybody is always complaining about going to the administrative unit to do any sort of paperwork because it takes such a long time. It is so difficult. I mean, even for me, a Slovenian, if I need to get some paper like a new ID or a driving license or anything from the administrative unit, I will prolong it because I just don't want to go there. It is such a weird system, and it takes forever. Even the simplest thing, even you need one signature and you're there for 1 hour. And I cannot imagine how it is for people who do not speak the language and are not familiar with the system. It is insane because you have all of these forms and you have to fill them, and they are really not. It's difficult to understand them, and they are usually related to some complex legislation. So it is good. It would be really great if cities would contribute by providing additional help. First of all, more employees at the administrative unit who work for these migrants, for these permits, living permits, housing permits, anything. So first of all, more staff so that there are no lines that basically you need to wait in line for 1 hour before you even get to the person. This would be really great. But also to provide support to help people understand the papers, understand the legislation, understand the forms that they have to fulfill, because usually they're quite difficult. So this especially, any help to navigate the administrative unit. And then also, you said an amazing examples in schools and in kindergartens. Now, I don't think we have this in Slovenia. We definitely don't have anybody in school who would help translate. But this, I would say, is a bit different because the children, from the Ukrainian children that are living here in Slovenia right now, a lot of them actually, I think, attend Ukrainian schools online. still quite a lot of them. And those that go to Slovenian schools, they do not all attend the same school. We have different schools here, different elementary schools even, and they are not in the same classes, they are not of the same age. Some of them go to the school in the city and some live in smaller rural towns in the area, and they attend schools there. Surprisingly, those in the rural areas often have better experiences because the schools are smaller and can take more of an individual approach than the bigger schools. For me, it was quite surprising because I thought, oh yeah, but they live so far away, in like not so far away, Slovenia, but still in a rural area that's a bit more further away from here. And they said that they have no problems there, that the school is actually great and the children are happy with the school there. So this was a bit surprising for me, that sometimes the bigger schools in the city with more immigrant population are more demanding and more are not as adaptable to this international community. But also what I wanted to say is that you mentioned the working conditions. So those immigrants, for example, from Ukraine, a lot of them actually work online, like if they this sort of job, that they actually stayed in the same employment. And some of them are seeking work. So for them, it was relatively easy because Ukrainians actually could receive papers a lot easier than some other immigrants here for some reason. They didn't have to wait ages for their asylum or anything papers that they needed. So they could really start working almost immediately. And if they have knowledge in different areas, it is quite easy to find work here. Especially like technical fields, we always need mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, etc. So these jobs are fairly easy to find here in Slovenia. But in general, not just for the Ukrainian, but for other immigrants as well. If somebody comes here with a degree that is from a different country, that is not from the European Union, like Eva said, it can be difficult because the standards are a bit different. And if this is somebody who has experience and knowledge in IT field, nobody cares what kind of paper they have as long as they can do what they need to do, basically. But when it comes to, for example, teaching positions, I have a coworker who has a degree from Serbia, which is not in the European Union, to be a history teacher. Now, first of all, we have already enough history teachers in Slovenia. It's very difficult for them to find work, but it would be even more difficult for her to find work because for teaching positions, when there is a code for a teaching position in Slovenia, they cannot employ an immigrant who did their degree outside of Slovenia and doesn't have a Slovenian nationality, unless they are the only applicant. So if there is any other applicant, even that doesn't have as good credentials, they will be accepted for the position before the immigrant. So because it is public school. So some positions are a bit more difficult to get employment for immigrants than the others. Also, we have seen recently here in Slovenia, but also I saw in some other countries like Croatia, and I imagine the situation is similar in other European countries, when it comes to the protection of workers. Basically, immigrant workers are usually very exploited. And if they have difficulties finding work in like, I don't know, regular companies, we now have this platform employment. So like Volt, there's delivery services, probably in your country is also Uber, which we don't have in Slovenia, but like Volt and Glovo, most of their delivery people are immigrants, a lot of them, and they are not protected in any way. So we really need legislation that would protect them because they work long hours, difficult hours, have no healthcare, and it is difficult for them to work in this way, and they receive very little money, and it's a huge problem here, and hopefully something will be done. Some legislation will be done to protect workers who work on platform, but so far it is not something that has happened yet. So we will see what will happen, but there's still a lot of work to be done in this regard.
Thank you, Frania, for raising the question of employment among migrants, because this is also a significant part of our discussion. And I would like to right now expand this topic. So what do you think? What initiatives are cities taking to increase migrant employment and utilize their potential as a workforce?
The first thing should be creating like database of available jobs, and then compare it to the database of migrants that come to our city. This is the thing that we basically did in Aleksandrów Łódzki by our social service center, and migrants just applying for the jobs who are verified by social worker, and they are bringing together with the employer, and mostly getting the job. So it's not so difficult now in Poland when there's like plenty of jobs on the market. Different jobs, not only the low-paid jobs, but also the really high
specialists.
Specialists. Specialists.
I also have this experience, and I agree with what you said. That's definitely verifying the needs, and then targeting the offer towards the person who can fill in this gap. This was also done by the regional labor market offices. They have created that first they did this kind of analysis of lacking jobs on the regional labor market, and then they also decided to translate the webpage with the offers to Russian and Ukrainian, so that it was more available, and that the people who are seeking jobs could get the link from the person who was helping them, and then verify, okay, is it what I'm looking for? Is it a job offer that I'm willing to take, or is it just an advertisement that it's not for me? So that's one thing. Another good practice that I know from the perspective of the region was Arrival Regions Interreg project that had as a pilot action done within the Łódzkie region. Even before the war, because the project was focusing on migrants in the European context, and Poland and Łódzkie did not have. I mean, the biggest group even before the war was Ukrainian minority. So within the Arrival Regions project, one of the pilot actions was to offer a language course, a Ukrainian language course for the civil servants working in different areas in social security, in the healthcare sector, in this labor market offices, etc. So it was quite a big group of people that were recruited for the course that was held online. It was during the COVID pandemic. Still, it started, and it was a course in Ukrainian designed for the civil servants in their fields. So not just basic course of a foreign language when you travel abroad and want to book a hotel or something, but more focused on the areas of their jobs with a designed course that is also a training and learning of a foreign language done, for example, for police officers or people working on the borders. So that's one thing, and another one was, and that was really useful, was a legal aid for migrants offered also in the Łódzkie region as basically as an offer for a private meeting with a legal assistant or in different kind of fields, starting from the labor market things and legalization of your diploma, etc., to a different kind of crimes that people were reporting, to family law and regulations related to legalizing the stay of the children, etc. So this was also one of the best practices that was really successful, and it was provided not only in Łódź as a capital of the region, but also in the smaller cities with open recruitment, and it was free of charge. So that was also very useful. It was not only for Ukrainians, because it started before the migration crisis and war in Ukraine, but still the majority of the people who received this help was the Ukrainian minority.
Yeah, in Alexandrov we also provided this kind of service. And we also combined all the services into one department. So the migrant who was entering the office and asking for some help with legalization of stay also get the access to cover all other needs.
Okay, so like a one-stop shop, right?
Yeah, including the job offers. So I think it was really helpful, and we're still supporting this department now because there's still a problem to be dealt with.
It is really nice to hear so many good initiatives coming from your countries. I don't want to repeat a lot of the things that have already been said. I think the problems we're dealing with are quite similar to one another. I would mention that in Slovenia, it is quite difficult for certain immigrants to receive jobs. I recently spoke to a woman that is a nurse by profession, and nurses are always needed everywhere, and she cannot find a job in Slovenia. So I don't know why, but definitely there should be more support from the city and from the government to fill these positions, especially the positions that are needed very much, because now we see that all of these immigrants coming to Slovenia, for example, are working. Women, a lot of them work as a cleaning ladies, and men work as laborers, basically. And even if they do have a lot more higher education and competences, that they could work in different jobs. Another thing that I also wanted to mention when it comes to employment is it would be really good to see more support for migrant entrepreneurs. Because either I'm not really sure what our legislation is. What do they need to start a company or a business here in Slovenia? I admit, but I think it is possible, and a lot of them are unfamiliar with this. And I know that we have seen people who said, "Okay, yes, I want to start a restaurant or something," and they do not know how to proceed with it. Or when it comes to IT and programmers, they would prefer to have their own business and freelance, and still they do not know how to legally start a company here in Slovenia. So basically, more programs and more projects to inform immigrants on how to start a business, what are the procedures, what are the legislation related to it for them, and also funding, but not just funding. I think especially what it is needed is guidance in this regard when it comes to entrepreneurship for migrants. I think this is something that we haven't mentioned yet, and it is also a part of this working processes for immigrants, and for them to be more active members of the society.
Okay, so let's move on to my last question. What long-term strategies should cities employ to address the challenges of the migration and war crisis?
I think we already learned a huge lesson in how to deal with this huge wave of migrants. As for Alexandrov, the city itself has like 25,000 people, and we accepted over 2,000 migrants. So it's 1/10 of the population. So yeah, there was the biggest migration wave in history, I think. But I think the society and the citizens, NGOs and local government, self-government acted really swift and dealt with this problem quite good, I think. If there's any good thing in this whole situation, is this lesson that by acting together and by acting quick, not waiting for the government to provide us with solutions, because after 20 hours of after attacks, we were at the border with our own buses, and we were taking the refugees to Alexandrov, and the solutions, government solutions, came like a month later. So there's a month when we accepted over 2,000 people to Alexandrov, and it was only because this network of citizens works so good, and I think that's also like improve our society and make it stronger for let's hope not, but for other crises to come.
Frania, do you want to go first?
I agree with Tomasz. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I think we saw a lot of interesting, I think we saw a lot of good practices now with the Ukrainian crisis, how we can deal with it, how it can look like. And I would just wish that we took the same practices learned here and incorporate them when it comes to dealing with other refugees. Especially in regards to Slovenia, our response, I would say, to the Ukrainian crisis was good. We were very positive when it comes to accepting migrants, and the integration was easy and fast. And the biggest thing is it was very easy for them to receive the papers. So I think that it was a bit of a different process than for other refugees that were coming like 5-6 years ago, from Syria and the nearby countries. But for them, it was such a big negative approach in the media and also from the government at the time. And all the time we could hear in our media that they are a huge burden for our economy because we are covering all of their expenses. And at the same time, there were examples of people who for years could not get their asylum papers and start working. So yes, they were a burden to our economy because they could not do anything on their own. They could not get employment. They could not get their own money, and they were not paying taxes because of it. But here now with the Ukrainian crisis, all of these refugees got their papers very easily, very quickly, and they almost immediately started attending schools and working. So it wasn't such a big burden to our economy, and the whole process was a lot easier and faster and better. And I think we can just learn to incorporate it to dealing with different target groups as well.
Yes, I agree with you totally. I think that first of all, communication between different agencies and different organizations, both public sector and private sector, that offer or cover certain areas of needs. That's one thing, and I would say it worked quite well in the cases that I was able to take part in. And definitely the bureaucratic burden. Since we all, that's exactly what you, Frania, said. Since certain procedures could be simplified and could work quite well and quite swiftly for both sides, for the civil servants who are explaining it and providing them, and for the refugees that were the clients of those solutions. So I think like the suggestion for the future would be to simplify the procedures as much as possible, because it's a bureaucratic burden for both sides. Learning and communicating and being open. Learning a language definitely helps, but if not, then finding an interpreter who might help. There is a solution that I don't know if it's being implemented and how it's going, but there was this kind of idea of creating a new kind of job as a migration assistant, because we have an experience with social services and family assistants in that kind of way, but the migration assistant would be a little bit different and would cover also the areas that you said, Frania, with opening your own small business as a migrant, with finding funding for the activities, with labor market, with education, with housing, etc., with healthcare provision. So that would be this kind of a complete orientation, and a person employed on a local level that could be this kind of a one-stop shop for all your problems, and try to figure out the solutions and contact you as a migrant with others who are responsible for, but providing the actual and factual information, and not and effectively helping you in integration.
Okay, does anyone want to add something?
I think we've covered it all.
Yes, okay, so thank you so much for a very fruitful discussion. I hope that our conclusions will have a real impact on urban politics. Thank you once again for participating.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask you to stay here with me on stage, because now it's time for the summary of the meeting and the closing remarks, and also the future initiatives and plans of the project European Human Rights Networks of Towns. And I would like Gosia Wochowska to join me, if you can hear me. Yes, Gosia is with us. Hi.
Yes, hi. I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, I know. But now we can finally see you and hear you. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. So super nice to see you all.
Thank you.
First of all, my warm greetings to Łódź, where I come from, and to Aleksandrów Łódzki, which I personally love with my full heart, for what you've done and what you're doing for different initiatives, and how you initiate processes that I really strongly stand for, such as your direct support to people from Ukraine, which you did, as you said, Tomek, immediately, right after the full-scale war started. So congratulations for that. And for a long-term support for women's rights, which is a constant struggle in Poland and has been for years. So congratulations to the organizers of the event, Eva, Anya, and the whole team. Also the technical team that stands that we normally don't see.
Thank you, guys, behind the scenes.
Thanks to you. My warm greetings also to go to the speakers. So George and Elvira from Torishnova, and to Frania from Slovenia, from Novo Mesto, and also to all the partners. I was just asked to make a final remark, which I will, if you allow me, dedicate to the project partners and the next initiatives. So I hope you guys can hear me. Still, greetings to Palermo, to the team in Bistrița, in Romania, in Graz, in Austria, to Hungary, to Kalnik in Croatia, to the municipality of Rafal in Spain, to Amsterdam, to our Dutch colleagues, to Malta, and yes, last but not least, to the organizers of the last face-to-face event that we had in Rychnov in Czech Republic. Really great to have you as partners. Next things that we will do as a partnership will be to meet online for a workshop. That is the second part of this event. So that will be fully interactive for the partners to exchange. And then we will meet in person. Well, most of you will meet in person in Torres Novas in Portugal in June. That will be our last face-to-face event. Then we will have the final one online in September, organized by the Slovenian team. And so all of the events are related with human rights protection with the most practical approach possible. And the project and initiatives of this kind are possible thanks to a program which is called SERV, which stands for Citizens, Equality, Rights and Values, and is not promoted almost at all at the national level in Poland. That would be the duty of the government to support that. They don't do it. So we need to organize bottom up. And I think there's hope in regions and local authorities and local organizations who understand the value of protecting fundamental rights, women's rights, and all the human rights that include or touch upon all the categories that you mentioned today. So we can all use the program. We have access to it as Polish citizens, as citizens of all the EU countries, even though the program is not supported on national levels, which may happen. It's happening actually in Poland right now. So that would be my suggestion. I will add a link to the program here and also on Facebook. So if anyone will then see the streaming later on, they can also find the link to the program and have a look at it, as it supports, as I said, fundamental rights as they are written in the EU treaties that we all should comply with. Personally, on local level as authorities, but also as national authorities of all the EU countries. So that will be all from me. Greetings from Berlin. Thank you for letting me speak, and send you warm greetings again. Congratulations. See you soon.
Thank you, Gosia. We also need to stress that the activities that we are taking part right now, as you said, will have a second part on the 12th of May. We'll be organizing an interactive international workshop on human rights. The tool that we will be using will be the same platform as today, but everyone who is going to register, you will all receive once again an invitation to register for the event on the 12th of May. The event will be interactive, so not just like this, that we have a conference setting with the panelists speaking and us here being present in the studio, but it will be totally interactive, so you will receive a link to it earlier on with certain materials as a food for thought, and also to be able to participate actively and work in groups and work with the tutors, etc. So the workshop will be basically addressed to students and youth as one group, to local activists, to people working with local activists, and to all who are interested in broadening their knowledge in relation to human rights and to the European values that we all share within this network. So that's one thing. Another part of the activities of the project is the local activities, and our Portuguese partners already mentioned their conference that they have done recently. So all of the partners are also implementing their smaller local activities either online or in a hybrid format or locally with the local communities. So that's also one of the activities that we'll be sharing the news on. So that's also one thing to look for through the Facebook page of the project and Instagram of the project, as well as we'll be informing and sharing about it. So that's also one thing. And of course, this is not just us having a conference and a discussion, but also preparing recommendations afterwards. So there is also like the European Human Rights Networks of Town project is also kind of a repository of unique materials gathered throughout the network and the cooperation with the partners. So that's also. That's also a really useful place to look for knowledge in relation to human rights in different contexts.
Very true. I forgot to mention one thing that I have as a as a request from an NGO, Kobiety Łódź, that is organizing a session, a training course session on between 22nd and 26th of May in Łódź. Which is in the framework of the Council of Europe. Okay. And it's called Human in Unity. And I also pasted a link there here in the chat. And I hope we can maybe make it more visible or reach out to
Sure, of course. As we said, we will be sharing. I will be sharing the information about the workshop that we have planned for the 12th of May. Then the event that is run by Krakow on the 15th and the 16th of May, which is unfortunately just in Krakow, but still there will be a lot of materials interesting for our network, I think. And then of course the event that you mentioned by Kobiety Łódź, also like late May. It was 22nd, you said?
22nd, 26th.
22nd, 26th.
Because Council of Europe, provides a framework that we oftentimes recall in our discussions. But it's actually quite good because this one is like really with hands-on, it's a workshop, it's a session international with partners from outside, and they're looking for local participants, so people from Łódź that will join the sessions.
Okay, so we'll spread the word here as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I think that's if the participants have any questions, comments, now it's the time to comment and share your thoughts.
I was checking the WhatsApp group because we have, of course,
WhatsApp group. We have. I mean, we are using all the tools that are useful for us.
Well. No comments so far, but I think the workshop will be a good platform for dialogue, and we will meet on the 12th.
Yes, and we will provide more tools on with being able to actively participate in the discussion. Mm-hmm. So thank you once again for taking part in the project, in the European Human Rights Networks of Town project, and the event that we've created for you here locally in Poland, empowering the local communities and putting individual rights in the center of the town's policies in relation to the most vulnerable groups that needed our support. And once again, please share, comment, and take part in in the events that will be following this one. So expect a lot of emails from us spamming your mailbox with different opportunities for networking and cooperation. Thank you once again. Thank you to all the panelists, both here and online. Thank you for the support of the team behind the scenes that allowed us to make it possible, make the event possible. Hello guys, thank you once again, and thank you to the University of Humanities and Economics for giving us this opportunity and space for cooperation. Thank you.